Oysters are marine invertebrates that belong to kingdom Animalia, phylum Mollusca, and classified as bivalvia with more than 200 species. There are two well-known families of oysters, which are Ostreidae, the true oysters, and Aviculidae, the pearl oysters. Focusing on Ostreidae, they are rich with calcium, iron, and protein, which makes them being hunted by crabs, starfish, seabirds, and even humans. Oysters can be found throughout the world's ocean, usually in shallow water or bed and reefs. Oysters are keystone species in some ecosystems. Oyster reefs protect marshes from erosion, stabilize bottom sediments, and improve water quality by filter feeding. And the reef was home to more than oysters. Many small fishes seek shelter in the reef structure. They are also known as vacuum cleaners in some areas, as they are filter feeders that extract algae and other food particles that pass through their gills, around 1.2 gallons of water, resulting in cleaner water which give positive impacts to other species. They are also economically important since they provide a market for food. This video demonstrates the superfiltration by oysters and harvesting of oysters.
So this is some algae that we grew here at the MBL, but these are naturally available. There, that's a good meal for these guys. And I calculate that in this 5-gallon aquarium, with this many oysters in here, that the oysters should be able to filter the algae out of the water and make it virtually clear in the course of about 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours at the most.
However, as much as 85% of all oyster reefs globally have been lost in the last 2 centuries, making oyster reefs among the most threatened habitats in the world, and this is something that we should stress on, as oysters benefit the ecosystem in numerous ways. So, how does this unwanted situation occurs? This mollusk, like any other shellfish, relies on carbonate ions to build their essential calcium carbonate shells. Shell is a protective outer coating secreted by one of their muscles called mantle. Mantles build shells from the bottom up where it absorbs salt and chemicals from the water surrounding. When enough ingredients are absorbed, the mantle forms a hard substance called calcium carbonate. The shells formed are used for protection, where oysters can hide by shutting their shells using their strong adductor muscle. Sadly, due to ocean acidification, the existing oysters cannot survive long enough to reproduce, as their shells were dissolved in acidified ocean water. The occurrence of ocean acidifications includes a series of chemical reactions where an extra amount of carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ocean and dissolves in seawater. It forms carbonic acid that dissociates, producing bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions, meaning that the number of hydrogen ions increase, resulting in the increase of acidity of seawater. This also reduces carbonate ions, causing difficulties in maintaining and building oyster shells. Let's hear what Elvian would like to say on the further impact of ocean acidification.
Well, if ocean acidification will continue to happen, then species that build their skeleton from calcium carbonate, such as oyster and other shellfish, might not have enough time to adapt to these drastic changes, and they might have to face a mass extinction of their species. And as for oyster, it is a keystone species in some ecosystem, so the effect might be bigger than what we think because it can lower the water quality, cause algal bloom, and can disrupt the food web that could eventually make the whole ecosystem fall into chaos.
So, are there any conservation efforts being done?
Well, the efforts. So it is crystal that ocean acidification causes harm to marine habitats. So we, human, as the cause of this harm, must take responsibility to avoid this from continuously happening. Well, we can cut global warming emission by reducing our usage of fossil fuel, and this will reduce the harm to marine ecosystems significantly. There are actually other practical conservation efforts, which is Coastal Carbon Dioxide Removal Belt (CCRB). The goal of CCRB is to establish both natural and man-made plant communities in the coastal region that will accomplish carbon dioxide removal in a manner of a forest, and which can be implemented along various scales. Next up, oyster restoration in Maryland by Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
However, researchers from University of Washington of Aquatic and Fishery Sciences discovered that some oysters can pass the environmental trauma such as extreme acidified condition to their offsprings that allows them to improve their survival. How far is the truth in this? We are still waiting for the answers.